yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind week and everything. And so I was just kind of running through it. I didn't know, I couldn't even remember this presentation from last year. And all right, better get on through this before
It
before
happens
the
again.
next gremlin jumps in my lap. Um, so let's go ahead. But yeah, anyways, as I was saying, this let me go to this thing. Um, yeah, I couldn't remember what I really actually had in this, and then once I started reviewing it, I'm like, oh, I can remember this. There's quite a bit here. So there's some longer videos, so that's why there's only like two or three of them. Um, so Travis, this is actually up in your this photo. I took this photo a few years ago. Trying to think. I don't know that what the name of the meadow is. It's
Oh, that meadow right there before you make the right hand turn to here.
yes,
I know
yeah,
exactly what that is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It big meadow there. Just caught a great day. I mean, obviously a great day, but it just had, I don't know, 2.5, 3 feet of snow, and the I had an old pair of snowshoes, probably like those bear paws. The second one's over. Second, well, they're both the longer of the two bear paw. Um, and remember, I don't remember if you told me, I told the story last year, but I had an old pair of those, and I had my new pair that I just got, and but I'd never been able to. I'd never taken my older ones out, and I realized how sloppy the bindings were. Everything. I mean, shoot, trying to keep them straight was just horrible. It was kind of fun, just the novelty of it, but at the same time, boy, if you had to travel very far with them, carry a bear, any sort of load, but the flotation on them was pretty good, and so this just kind of goes into obviously a bunch of the different styles and shapes, and these things they've been making a version of these for so long. Um, Goes way back, but I found this video, um, and it was kind of interesting. I went in and threw it in there. It's only about 5 minutes, but it was pretty good.
But first, cold weather and snow are finally here, and that is making a lot of people happy because they can go skiing and snowmobiling. And some will do something different and look for the quiet of winter woods on snowshoes. And as 207's Don Kerrigan found out, there's one town in Maine where snowshoes used to be a very big deal.
Ask most Mainers about snowshoes, and they'll probably think of these, metal and plastic, made someplace else. But there was a time not that long ago when snowshoes were made here and made of wood.
There may not be many people who still use old wooden snowshoes like I do. I needed to get these fixed. They were built here in the town of Norway many years ago. And it turns out there's quite a story in that.
Snowshoe capital of America.
Yes, the snowshoe capital of America.
It's a title the town of Norway gave itself in the first half of the last century and is still honored here at the Norway Historical Society. It began with a fiddle player named Millie Dunham in the late 1800s. His clever fingers, it turned out, could also make a mean snowshoe.
He was a farmer and he would make snowshoes in the winter for extra money. And evidently he made exceptional snowshoes because Admiral Peary ordered some for his Arctic or Antarctic trip and liked them so well he ordered some more.
Curator Sue Dennison says people loved his snowshoes. It was a time when many Mainers needed snowshoes to work on the farm, work in the woods, or hunt. So Millie taught his nephew the skill, and Dennison says the nephew then taught a man named Tubbs, who in 1907 started a real snowshoe factory, employing dozens of people in Norway making hundreds of pairs of snowshoes.
They would steam ash wood or whatever kind of wood they used to make the frames so it was flexible, and they would press it around the mold so the wood would dry in that shape. And of course you can see the snowshoe shape here.
Tubbs was eventually sold and moved to Vermont. So some former workers started a new company in the same building and called it Snowcraft. In World War II, Snowcraft made snowshoes like these for the Army fighting in Europe. Charles Longley was a local kid back then.
They had to increase considerably to meet the government contracts.
They made literally tens of thousands of pair of mountain-style snowshoes for the 10th Mountain Division here out of Norway.
Paul Cody knows a few things about Norway snowshoes.
This small group of shoes right here are all Millie Dunham shoes.
Cody has been collecting and studying snowshoes for 25 years. At one point, he says he had 2,000 pairs.
Face are all Native American.
Now he has the best 250 to 300 pairs on display at his office in Oxford, including the oldest and most elegant made years ago by Maine's native tribes.
You look at the intricacy of how they webbed the body of the shoe. It's fine workmanship.
But the demand for snowshoes required efficiency, so the one-man shops went away and factory production took over.
But in addition to Tubbs and Snowcraft, you had Ellingwood Turning Company in West Paris manufacturing snowshoes under the Oxford brand. You had Millie Dunham making snowshoes. You had H.H. Hosmer making snowshoes. And with the exception of the Oxford brand of shoes that was made in West Paris, all the others were made in Norway.
There was a snowshoe festival here in Norway in 1949 where there was no snow, so they brought in sawdust, dumped it on Main Street so they could have snowshoe races. The big snowshoe was unveiled at that time.
That big snowshoe, 16 feet tall, was built as a sign to welcome people to Norway, proudly proclaiming the town as the snowshoe capital of America.
And it was a claim to fame.
Well, we like to think it's a claim to fame.
Snowcraft closed decades ago. The giant snowshoe sign fell into disrepair and then vanished. Paul Cody has a replica of it on his ceiling. Like his amazing collection, it's a piece of the old Maine.
Most of the shoes that I sell today are sold to decorate. Either they're ski lodges or restaurants, or they're for decoration purposes, not really for walking.
Reminders for Norway of what this town used to do.
It's the snowshoe capital of America. That's what the sign said.
That's quite a distinction.
Yeah, it is.
Because
It
there
is.
were
It was a
other
big
states
deal.
that made snowshoes?
That's correct. For dinky little Norway, Maine, it was a big deal. And it still is.
A reminder of the times when a walk in the woods used something made right here.
Interesting that even in 1949, they didn't have enough snow, had to use the sawdust. Don says, as far as he can tell, there is one business in Maine still making wooden snowshoes. He says he plans to pay it a visit.
I really want to get out. And it was nice, kind of interesting to hear the history on Tubbs, because that's what I've got. And I know they've been around for, I'm good right now, but it's in and out. Sorry, guys. Let's go ahead and just get into this next video then, because I don't know how much longer we're going to have on this. All right, let's.
How to use snowshoes.
Okay, how about now? Can you guys see and hear that?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay. Oh, so I'm not just watching this by myself. I'm just saying, hey, what do you think?
Now, remember, with all wintertime activities, make sure that this video is not your only resource before you head up into the mountains. Wintertime up here is dangerous and there's inherent risk. So make sure you're taking your avalanche course and studying up appropriately before you go. All right, let's get into it. So before you learn how to snowshoe, you need to pick out your snowshoes. There's three main types of snowshoes.
It froze.
That's basically meant to just get some trail running in on light snow in the woods.
Okay.
The more traditional type of snowshoes
All right.
are going to be both recreational and backcountry snowshoes.
Let me know
and
when
that's
you
what we're
guys
going to be
are
talking
okay
about for
with
the rest of this video.
what you're seeing, because it's still going on my end, but I think the internet is just really glitchy out here. So,
So recreational
are you
snowshoes
able to see anything going on now?
Yeah, we're good now.
It
It's just
fixed
going really
itself.
choppy.
are not much different from backcountry
Okay.
snowshoes. The main difference is that recreational snowshoes are designed to be used on flat to rolling terrain. And because of that, there'll be a couple differences in designs that we'll talk about throughout the video. But basically, you can boil it down to they'll probably be a bit heavier, they'll probably have less traction, and they'll probably have less heel lift, which makes it easier to go up steep inclines, which you won't need on flat and rolling terrain. Backcountry snowshoes you can think about as mountaineering snowshoes. So those do have some serious traction. They have a lot of lightweight technology, and they do have heel lifts to make going up steep slopes a lot easier on your calves. So depending on what activity that you are wanting to do, you'll be looking in that category of snowshoes. Now, within each category of snowshoes, there's a couple different factors that you'll always have to balance out with any outdoor gear purchase. And that's money, that's weight. Those are always going to be two big issues. With snowshoes in particular, there's a couple more. There's traction and there's float. So traction is going to be how well your snowshoes grip onto the snow. And again, that depends on what activity you're going to want to be doing outside. And then there's float. And float is how well your snowshoes float on top of powder. So how well they keep you on the surface of the snow versus how far you sink into the snow. And all of this is going to be a balancing act between them. So the more you spend on a snowshoe, maybe the more traction or the lighter weight it'll be. But if it's a lot lighter weight, it might have less float because it'll be physically smaller in size. So balance it all out and find out what works for you. All right, now let's break down the anatomy of a snowshoe. So here's a snowshoe, and a couple of the main parts on it are going to be traction, bindings, heel lift, and the frame material. Let's start with the frame material. So this snowshoe in particular is made of a plastic. Plastic has a great benefit because it's going to be a lot lighter weight. So when you're doing backcountry stuff, it's a pretty good option to look at, especially if it's an overnight backpacking winter experience. With that, usually comes a higher price point. So again, it's a balancing act. Some other frame styles out there is going to be the traditional tubular style, and that would be a metal tube that basically wraps around the frame of the snowshoe. These are going to be usually lower price point options that have better float, so they stay on top of the snow better. But with that, again, they're not as lightweight, they don't have as good traction, so there's some downsides to them as well. The last style of frame out there is going to be flat stock, and this is like the MSR Lightning Ascents, which are pretty famous. And those are going to be great because they actually get a lot of grip and little like micro traction on the snow surface. They also pack down pretty flat, which is really nice. But again, those are going to be a higher cost and actually a higher weight as well. So it's a little bit, again, balancing. Next up, let's look at the traction on a snowshoe. So depending on your activity, your snowshoe might have some or all of these features. But if you look at a snowshoe with the most traction out there, it is always going to have a toe cramp on, and that's these metal spikes at the tip. Basically, they're attached to your toe, and every time you walk, it pivots and digs into the snow. And that gives you some awesome grip as you're going uphill. You also can have heel crampons, which is basically the mirror image on the back of your heel, and that helps you from sliding down. Recreational snowshoes don't tend to have that feature, but almost all snowshoes have toe crampons. These snowshoes also have side rails, which are these blue rails right here. And side rails really help if you're going to be side hilling or traversing. They help you grip into the snow from the side of your snowshoe if your full snowshoe is not in contact with the surface. So again, recreational snowshoes tend not to have that, or at least not to have it as severe as this one is. And then the last traction feature you'll probably see on a snowshoe is going to be a braking bar, which are these series of plastic grooves that stick out into the snow. And basically what that does is it just creates tiny little slats that stick into the snow, and it brakes you. So it stops you from sliding backwards as you go uphill. So again, that's usually a more common thing in backcountry snowshoes too. Maybe one of the most important features of a snowshoe is its surface area. The point of a snowshoe is to keep you on the surface of the snow. And the easiest way to do that is to make a really big surface area for you and spread out your pressure. So usually the bigger the surface area of the snowshoe, the better float it gives you on top of the snow. Now, also the bigger the surface area, the heavier it is, the more cumbersome it is to actually use. So you can see designers use a couple different techniques, like in mine, and for instance, they cut out a lot of holes in it to lightweight it, but not big enough to actually let snow come up and have you sink in. So this is a great technique to kind of mitigate that. But basically you'll be balancing how big you want your snowshoe surface area based on your weight and based on how heavy you want your snowshoes to be. So usually when you go online or go to a store to buy snowshoes, it will ask you your weight and your gender, and then it will basically calculate out what surface area or usually length of snowshoe you want. So mine are 26s. But you don't always have to stick with what the recommended thing is. So like if you live in a place with really deep powder and you're always going to be using your snowshoes in powder, maybe you want to err on the side of a larger or longer snowshoe to give you better float. If you live somewhere where it's always icy or where there's not really deep snow, maybe you don't need snowshoes at all, but if you do, maybe you want to err on the smaller side. All right, let's look at the bindings. So this binding in particular is a BOA binding. That's the company that makes these, but basically it's a little dial that you pop in and out, and essentially what it does is it just ratchets. So you pop it in, you twist it, and you can hear it click and tighten up. And all you do is pop it out, and then you can twist it and loosen it. So it's super easy to use, pretty dummy proof. It usually comes with a higher price point because it's a newer technology though. But these are what's used in a lot of like newer snowboard boots and some bindings like that. The more traditional style is going to be strap or ratchet, and basically that's just two bands and a heel band that you pull through a ratcheting mechanism, and it keeps your foot in place that way. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but it's more traditional, so it's a lower price point and it's more commonly found than the BOA system is. All right, last but definitely not least, let's look at a heel lift. So as you're going uphill, this is a really big surface. And when you're going uphill, if your heel always has to go back down to that position, it is going to tire you out real quick. It'd be much better if your heel could stop halfway down like this. So you're always kind of like on a staircase. So what backcountry snowshoes do is they have this heel bar, which you can usually lift with your actual trekking pole, and you don't have to reach down and use your hand, but you just flip it up. And then every time you walk, your heel is actually going to land back down about, 2 inches above the base of your snowshoe. And that's going to really help relieve some stress on your legs. So again, snowshoes come in a variety of different options. Take a look at what you're going to be using it most for and try to find a snowshoe with features that best match what you're going to be using it for. So let's talk about when to use snowshoes. Snowshoes are obviously going to be most helpful on the snow, but there's a couple different types of snow. So we have powder, which is going to be deep, soft snow. We have ice, which is going to be a hard crust, and we have everything in between, which is a pretty variable snowpack. So when we're talking about powder, so soft, deep snow, that's when these things really come in handy. And that's anywhere from flat terrain to rolling terrain to steep terrain. And again, if you use steep terrain, you'll be wanting more traction and heel lift features on yours. But that's going to help you stay above the snow, because otherwise you'll be post-holing, anywhere from your knees all the way up to your chest, which is going to make travel in the snow very difficult. Now, if we're talking about ice, snowshoes do not really have a place there. Ice is going to be something with a more aggressive traction feature, like potentially micro spikes or potentially crampons, depending on what you're doing and what the grade of that slope is. And then when we talk about all the snows that are in between. So that's snow with a crust on top that you can punch through to what's underneath. We can talk about wind-blown snow. You can talk about firm snow. You can talk about corn, condensed spring snow. There's tons of different types. And that's all going to really be variable on the conditions that day and during those couple hours you'll be there. Snow really varies throughout the day, especially as you get into like a freeze-thaw cycle in the spring. So usually in the morning, things will be icier and harder, and maybe snowshoes aren't as needed. But as you're coming back down the mountain in the afternoon and the sun's heating things up, that firmness is really going to turn to slush, and you're going to start post-holing pretty bad in the afternoon, and snowshoes would come in handy. So take a look at the time of year you're going, the weather pattern, and the snowpack. And if you see that snowpack turning into powder, slush, or any sort of soft pack that you can punch through, then I would consider snowshoes. But if it's firm and hard, usually snowshoes aren't needed, and you can look at more of a traction device or a backcountry ski. All right, I think it's time to get into it. Let's put one of these on and see how they work. So you can put on snowshoes with boots or trail runners, depending on your binding setup and what's most comfortable for you. I'm wearing boots today, but you don't need to. So every snowshoe is going to be different, but for mine, there is a right and there is a left. So make sure you match it up correctly. It'll have a little bit of a curve to the outside, but I'm going to go ahead, slide my boot on in there. I'm going to bring the heel strap around and ratchet down that heel strap. And then I'm going to push my BOA button in and ratchet that down as well. See if you can see that. So it's all tight and snug. And now my snowshoe pivots underneath the ball of my foot. So let's do that on the other side too. All right, got both of those on. So as you're walking on snowshoes, it's going to be a little bit cumbersome. Try to keep your feet a little bit apart so they don't run into each other. Let's see what that looks like. And you'll notice that as you walk, you got to pick up your foot, and your back end of the snowshoe is actually going to drag a little bit in the snow behind you. That's totally fine. And it makes it a lot easier to be using trekking poles with snow baskets on them too, to stop your pole from shooting all the way down to the bottom of the snowpack, especially if we're talking powder or slush. All right, friends. And that's pretty much all there is to snowshoes. They're super easy, super accessible and approachable, which is what makes them great, because it can get people who don't have a lot of backcountry experience out enjoying the mountains in the wintertime when it's a lot harder to do that. So you can go and try to buy your own snowshoes using these tips that I provided with you today. You can go to somewhere like a Next Adventure or an REI near you and rent some snowshoes and take them up to the mountain and try them out. But I always recommend going to the backcountry with a friend. Try not to go alone. Make sure to get some practice before you put yourself in any sort of high-risk environment. And of course, make sure to have loads of fun out there in the snow. It's a beautiful time of year. And get ready for a bunch of more snow videos coming your way. So make sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time on Radish Uprooted. Bye, everyone.
And we've been kind of waiting for these storms come in. Now we may have to drive farther up into the mountains to find the snow, but at least it's starting to get there a little bit. Internet connection, and it's in and out, and how about now? You guys okay? Okay.
Loud and clear.
I'm just gonna keep checking in with you. Look, just keep yelling at me. So, yeah, I think I've got on our calendar towards the end of February. There's a cross country ski day. I don't know when it is. I think it was around the 28th. But the snowshoe date that I had preliminary written out is come and gone, because that was back in January. So I'm just kind of leaving it as the conditions warrant And so we got, there's three of you guys. And Travis, you were saying Friday, Saturday is your better
Friday,
days?
Saturday for me. I mean, Afton's a teacher, so she doesn't get off on Fridays. But I seemingly always have Friday, Saturdays off.
Okay.
Do weekends. I can do Saturday, Sundays.
Okay. So
You'd
we'll
probably be
schedule.
happier if I didn't go, so it'd be easier if you used to take Afton.
Okay, so we'll schedule something like on a Tuesday and Wednesday then, and we'll, we'll yeah, we'll kind of watch and just kind of keep in touch with each other, and we may even need to get a couple outings scheduled so that all of us could go and rotate those in, because I know the REI schedule bounces around, and so we may just have to do that, and maybe we do one down in Yosemite, and one more up in your neck of the woods too, Travis, up in Sequoia or Kings Canyon, and just kind of get out, because I mean, we're coming into February now, and I haven't been up doing anything. I haven't been cross country skiing or anything yet, so I wanted to kind of take advantage of that. And the other thing too is we're kind of getting through this segment of the Moonshadow, group, and we're going to start talking about rock climbing here real soon. So,
at least do one trip for this.
We do. We really do. We really do. So we'll just I'm going to throw something out there, and I'm going to try to work around your guys' schedule. If we get a Saturday and we all can head out, perfect. I'd love that. But if it's, a midweek or something like that, hey, that's the only chance to go. We may have to, like I said, do a couple of them. And Travis, you guys can schedule them too, and say, hey, we're going.
We were just talking about that. We might go this coming weekend if
we get as much snow as expected.
We'll definitely set up something for this weekend.
I know this next weekend is the only Saturday I've worked probably on my schedule. I got to work, but on the flip side, I'm just doing a stocking shift until 11:30. So I may even be able to jump and knock that out and meet you guys somewhere or something.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to do that too. So let's just keep in touch on that and try to get something on the books, and so we can get out and start doing this stuff, and instead of just talking about it and everything. How's your record, your schedule looking like, Dave?
I was just gonna ask where you guys are thinking about going this weekend, because if I get this trailer project, if I at least get the walls on in here, I was trying to take our trailer up to Lakeshore next weekend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I'm open, really, to be honest with you. So wherever we could get some snow and wherever would be convenient for people. I mean, I don't want to, if there's just to be Travis and after, I wouldn't say, hey, let's go to Yosemite.
I mean, we can get to Yosemite.
We'll go wherever.
But that's only 10 minutes up the road for us.
Yeah. But
what I would say is, Dave, my thought, both David's, my thought would be for us, if we go next weekend, we were thinking just even going to like Big Meadows or going up that way, or going to behind what's the one that we went to the hike up to the top of the, oh my God, the attic Grand Grove. What's that lodge that's behind the Grand Grove? Muir Lodge. We were thinking about going out of Muir Lodge and going to the top of that.
Oh, cool.
Panoramic point type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd be down for anywhere if people are interested.
I think we lost Dave again.
Dave.
I think you're right.
Okay,
There
we're
he
back.
is.
I think we're back. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I'm like, well, everybody else is frozen, but I don't know what their problem is. And then all of a sudden,
fine.
right? Oh, here we go again. Oh, trying to reconnect. So it says lost my network again. I can hear everybody again, but
I can hear you.
Yeah. So we'll just be in touch, and we'll just kind of. And Travis, go ahead and make up and Dave that. So you're going to be up there next weekend. Yeah. If I know that, we might try to put something up maybe on. Are you going to be up there Saturday and Sunday, or what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, so next weekend is another 3-day weekend for the schools. So Ashley and my kids will be off Monday. So we are either going to head up like late Friday or early Saturday and stay Saturday, Sunday night and come home sometime on Monday.
Are you guys going to do some skiing up there?
Yeah, we're planning on hitting up China Peak.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's just stay in touch with it and see how the week comes together and with schedules and stuff. And we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
I do have one more video, and
I have to go to work, so I'll see you all a little later.
Travis, thank you so much for always joining. I appreciate all the support and everything. As he fades off into the distance, he just jumped out the window. That's almost creepy. It's like, whoa.
Travis, that was weird.
When you're out, you're all the way out, boy. All right. So let's go ahead and sneak this last video in. It's I think there's probably a little bit of redundancy in this one too. A lot of good information, and I'll try to hold this thing together to get through this presentation. But let's go ahead and here. Let's see. All right, you guys, everybody seeing this?
Yeah. Yeah, we see it.
I'm just gonna leave it right there. If it's not broken, I'm not gonna try to fix it. It'd be nice to go up to Huntington and see this much snow.
Oh yeah.
No kidding. Hey folks, it's Jared Mannanen from the website Tahoe Trail Guide. Today I'm going to go over a couple of basic snowshoeing concepts. Now a lot of people kind of take for granted the ease of use of snowshoeing, but I've met many people who have actually wondered what all the hidden and secret techniques are to snowshoeing. I hate to break it to you, but they are pretty basic to use. Mostly lift your knees up a little higher. As you can see, we've got some pretty deep snow here. But mostly lift your knees up higher, walk a little bit wider, and you'll be all right. However, there are some specific techniques that'll make your journey a little bit safer and a little bit more enjoyable. So I'll be sure to share those with you. So if you're in deep snow and you want to take a break, a lot of times I'll pack down the snow on where I'm going to be standing. And that way it keeps the snow off my feet and gives us, whoever I'm with, a stable platform on which to stand while we're hanging out, having a snack, or taking a break. Whatever. Now, if you are going to take a break, always be mindful. These pine branches have a lot of snow on them, so if a big gust of wind does hit, that snow could drop on top of us. However, it's kind of calm right now. I can see the snowflakes are dropping straight down, so this seems as good a place as any to rest. As you can see by the profile of this snow down here, we are in about 1.5 feet of fresh powder, so it's pretty exhausting to actually break your own trail. But once you have more than one person on the trail with you, you can kind of leapfrog and take turns breaking trail, and the people behind the line have it a lot more easy than the person up in front. So one of the ways that you can make a turn while standing still is a real simple thing. It's funny because I see a lot of people actually stumble just by basically standing still and wanting to look in a different direction on the flat surface. And what ends up happening is that when they go to turn around, they forget they're wearing their snowshoes, and then they end up stepping on top of their snowshoes and pitching forward. You have to be conscious that you got these big floppy things on your feet, otherwise you can end up falling down pretty easy. But generally speaking, keep the tails of your snowshoes in place and just move the tips. So you'll just make these small little, you know, micro steps as far as going around in a circle. And it's a pretty simple technique, but again, it's just one of those things that you have to fall at least once to realize that you can't just act like you normally would and take a step back like that, and all of a sudden you've pinned yourself to the ground. A lot of people kind of don't really think about until they've fallen once or twice trying to do it, is to walk backwards in snowshoes. It's not the easiest thing, and you can see that the snowshoes have a hinge. So this hinge that the ball of your foot is attached to allows you to walk normal. Otherwise you'd be just clomping around with these things stationary to your foot. You'd look like Frankenstein going through the forest here, and nobody wants to look like that. So they have basically a free heel. The heel is free to walk normally. What that means though is when you are walking backwards, you have to be pronounced in how high you lift up your leg. So for example, if I don't lift it up far enough, that back can kind of like dig in. So you really have to, I like to point my toe, almost like kind of if I was going to stab the earth with my toe. So it brings the snowshoe mostly level, and then kind of walking back. If you've ever seen one of those dogs wearing booties that just doesn't want to wear the booties, this kind of looks like that dog. But if you don't want to fall on your butt and a foot and a half of fresh powder, this kind of helps. But not as easy to do in powder, and I'll demonstrate that here. So yeah, I needed a little bit of an assistance with the trekking poles in order to accomplish that. If I had to back up, it would probably be because I ended up walking in some type of terrain feature that was very dangerous or hazardous, and it was an absolute must that I went back. So if I get to a precipice of some sort and I knew that the edge was going to cleave off and fall 1,000 feet into the whatever valley below, that I would use that. But otherwise, just keep walking forward and you'll be fine. There's basically two different ways to get up a hill. One, you could go directly up the hill, or the other way, you could traverse and you could create a zigzag pattern up the hill. If you want to go straight uphill, there's two options. One, you just kick steps, and I'll show you on this kind of low angle. It's not really necessary as to do it right here, but just for training purposes, we'll show you. So the ball of my foot here has, all snowshoes will have a pretty aggressive cramp on underneath the ball of your foot, because that's where the most of your weight is going to be focused. So as you're going up, you can kind of kick steps, or you can really plant the ball of your foot so that that main crampon is gripping and you don't have to worry about falling back. Now, if the pitch is super steep, which this is not, but if it was, a lot of snowshoes will incorporate kind of a heel rise, and that's to decrease the strain on your calf. So you flip that thing up, and it gives you like 1.5 inches to 2 inches of play. Now, I'd do it on both snowshoes if I was going to actually use it, but I just wanted to show that you could do this. It does decrease calf strain a little bit. However, I generally don't use that. It feels weird, and I don't have the biggest feet, so sometimes it feels like it might just undo this thing, because all it takes is a thwap right there and it'll come down. So anyway, I generally don't use that. I'll just kick steps with that main crampon and go up the hill. One way that I like to move uphill, usually on pretty steep pitches but short ones, so like a berm at the side of your driveway. That's a good use for this one. But anyway, it's basically called sidestepping, and you're just going to sidestep. You're going to do small steps with your feet uphill, and your feet are remaining parallel. And you do have to definitely get the tails up so that they don't drag. But it's an easy way to get up a short, steep section if, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out that you can go directly up it or not. So I'm gonna zigzag up this little incline here. Again, it's not very steep, but for our purposes here, I just kind of wanted to show you what I'm doing with my feet. So once you go up into one direction, you're going to want to change directions. And in order to do that so that you don't fall down, what I like to do is I kind of put the poles perpendicular to the fall line. So it's kind of creating this stable platform that I can put my hands on top of. And the uphill side snowshoe, I'm going to lift up and rotate so it's pretty much 180 degrees from the downhill side. And then I'm going to bring that ski pole or trekking pole back, create another platform so I have 3 points of contact. This foot that I just rotated and put down on the ground, and then my 2 poles. Then I'm going to kick my foot up and then carry on. Now if I was to go back, just lather, rinse, repeat, put the poles down, rotate the foot, bring that pole back up front so that the direction of travel, you're ready to go, and kick your foot free and continue on.
Here I am walking up a relatively steep hill, and you can see I'm definitely getting a workout here. It's pretty deep snow, but I'm using that same traversing technique where that uphill foot, I'm rotating 180 degrees to create my own personal switchback, so to speak, and then bringing those poles around so that I can use them to balance on top of while I kick that lower hill leg up and around. In this particular example, it's probably not really necessary that I do this traversing technique. Generally speaking, you can just contour terrain and do gradual arcs or gradual turns rather than having to actually do this specific traversing technique. Unless the hill is very icy, you can pretty much just walk downhill. Just make sure you balance your weight directly over your feet.
The first rule about falling down in snowshoes is don't fall down in snowshoes, especially if it's deep snow like this. Probably have about 1.5 feet of powder here, and you can easily suffocate in that if you start to panic. So don't fall down. However, if you do fall down, the second rule is don't panic. You have to have your mind clear, you have to be focused and determined, and if you're stressing out, panicking, and flailing about, it's just not going to work for you to get up very effectively or efficiently. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple different ways that you get up out of deep snow when you're in snowshoes and you have trekking poles. So first thing, clear the pathway around your mouth so that you can breathe. I'm going to go ahead and undo the straps on my poles. Clear, clear. And instead of trying to sit up and doing a crunch, that takes a lot of energy, I'm going to gather both poles in one hand and I'm going to roll over onto one side. And by using these poles that kind of create like a stable platform that I can push off of with at least one hand. So I'm onto one hip now, have these poles, and you can use it to push up or not. But ultimately you want to get your feet underneath your body. So the idea is that you do want to try to stack your weight underneath your feet so you can push directly up. Between using the poles and your snowshoes, you can create a stable platform. Even though there's this much snow, you can still compress it down enough that it will hold you upright. Hence, I'm not falling 3 or 4 feet below the snow right now.
I haven't emphasized it a whole lot, but the importance of compressing the snow around you in order to create a platform from which you can stand up is pretty critical when trying to get up from a fall, particularly if you're on flat terrain such as this. The urge to try to lift yourself up or push yourself up with your trekking poles is great, but you have to resist it. It's not going to work. You're going to just wind up bending or breaking your pole or bearing your pole up to the handle. It's just not worth doing. That's why I put them together and use them as kind of an anchor or a platform to push off of. And I also use them to help compress the snow around me so that I can create that firm layer that I can stand up on. And in these examples of me trying to get up, I hope what you see I'm doing is not trying to flail about, wasting a whole bunch of energy, but rather gathering my senses, orienting myself, clearing my face so that I can breathe, and then trying to like pack down the snow around me. This does take some strength because ultimately I'm doing a one-legged squat or lunge or pistol squat, but that's your best way of getting up, is if you can just get your feet under your body and then stand directly up. In this example, I'm not using any poles, and it definitely makes it more challenging to get up because a couple of times there where I start to post hole up to my shoulders, trying to push up with my hands alone. Clearly, it's not a huge amount of surface area that my hands create, which is why I always tend to bring trekking poles with me when snowshoeing. All right, folks, that's all I got. That was a pretty long one. Hope you made it all the way through. I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'd also love to hear from you if you had any comments or feedback regarding your experience snowshoeing. Take care.
All right. Well, yeah, we eked through that. I think the most I got from that was just the last couple minutes of just, because I could kind of see myself in that spot. Head first, down to my waist, and all you see is snowshoes wiggling out of the snow. But so looking forward, I think we're gonna move. Probably get it. I got to look at the curriculum a little bit more. I'm not sure if there's anything else that we really need to cover with cross country skiing or snowshoeing. Rock climbing is kind of following. And I know we're gonna try. Hopefully, we can do this between now and the end of the month. We can get out and get either some cross country skis on or at least some snowshoes on, and get out and spend some time out there before warmer weather starts setting in and everything. What else you guys got throw out there?
Nothing specific on my end. I'm looking forward to the idea of being able to go out because I've been itching this whole time.
Okay.
That last video
There
looked
you are.
brutal. I've never snowshoed in that. I've boot packed in snow that deep. Deeper, but
yeah. I mean,
the snow angels at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a little envious of how much snow they got for, I'd love to be up here and see that, but and then I lost connection again for a moment. But so I guess we'll just try to stay in contact and try to see if we can get up there and go have some fun.
Yeah.
But that's about all I got for this week. And hey, thanks for enduring the tech glitches, but there's nothing that's guaranteed on these things, but except for that we'll just try. So
keep snow dancing for what's coming at us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
That sounds like a plan, Dave. That sounds like a plan.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, you guys, and we'll catch you if we don't chat during the week. We'll definitely catch you next weekend, but we'll throw stuff at me if you get out. Share it with me, and I'll just kind of share it with the other group and try to keep people motivated. I mean, we had a really good group last week. There's like 7 people that joined us last week, which was awesome. We just keep trying to get everybody on these things and keep it going. So
totally.
Heck
all
yeah.
right. Yeah, thanks everybody. I always appreciate the support, and we'll catch you guys throughout the week.
Sounds
Enjoy the
good,
rest
man.
of your day.
Sounds good.
Everybody.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, you got it.
Have a good
All
Super
right.
Bowl. See ya.
Yeah, take care.
Peace.
Bye.